Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well out there. Well, I thought I'd try something a little different this time, and see if a little Q&A session could do us some good. And if so, maybe I'll do more of them, maybe not. We'll see. But let's see what kind of questions you guys came up with for me in the meantime. Have you been ripping and tearing in Doom Eternal? Yes. Yes, I have, and it is glorious. I think I am about halfway through the campaign now, as I've been taking my time with it, just playing on the game's normal difficulty, the Hurt Me Plenty difficulty. I don't really know how I feel about some of the gameplay changes, like the constant platforming that makes it feel kind of like Mirror's Edge for some reason, but I'm really enjoying the challenge of it though. This is easily one of, if not the most difficult Doom game that I have ever played, and I've played them all, so that is really saying something, but I can't wait to delve into it more. Have you ever gotten adrenaline shakes while gaming? I have, and it usually happens during a few very specific instances. Typically if I'm fighting a very difficult boss with particularly intimidating music, and finding myself near the end, then becoming self-aware that I'm near the end of it. During those final moments, I do find myself starting to shake a little bit as the whole thing just gets really super intense for me. The reason this fits most with the harder boss fights is the thought that if I lose, I know I'll have to start it all over again, and know that even reaching the same point again would be a chore and a half. This happened to me multiple times during games like Devil May Cry 3, the Monster Hunter games, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Hollow Knight, Fury, the classic Mega Man games, and a bunch of others. I've also found this happening to me during rhythm-based games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero, during really difficult songs with fast solos. If I lose a bunch of times and then finally get through the tough solo, I will also start to get the shaking feeling. Sometimes it's even caused me to pause the game before the song's final verse and chorus, just because I feel too nervous to even hit the rest of the easier notes at the end. I'm shaking a little now, just thinking about it. Fun times! What are your biggest gaming story moments that affected you? Obviously would contain spoilers, but moments like a certain thing that happens at the end of Disc 1 on FF7. Oh yeah, I've got plenty of these, and they're going to be spoilery. That particular moment in Final Fantasy VII is definitely one of them, for sure, but there's a lot more. For starters, Final Fantasy VI actually hit me in a pretty hard way, too. The scene where Kefka poisons Doma as a cheap and really sick method to take out its people was just tough. It still makes me want to jump into the TV and get him myself. Another big one was in Metroid. I had seen the cover art for the original Metroid, Metroid 2, and Super Metroid, and until finally beating one of them, I had no idea that Samus was actually a woman. It made me respect the character even more, and again, talking about my previously ignorant young boy self here, showed me for the first time that women were just as much a force to be reckoned with in the video game world, even more so than certain Italian plumbers. Coming up a little in the years was also Xenogears, which I still consider to be my favorite game of all time. Of all things to really stick with me the most, I'd say the plotline revolving around the character Id, and especially the reveal of who Id actually was, took me for even more of a loop. I mean, between playing that game and seeing all of Evangelion at the age of 14, I certainly had a lot of things questioning my very existence. No wonder I turned out this way. I've also been a big fan of Metal Gear Solid ever since it first came out, and the original Psycho Mantis boss fight will always stick with me. There was nothing quite like it in the gaming world, and frankly, I don't even think there is now. Kojima really knocked it out of the park with that game, and that amazing fight sequence. It changed my entire perception of what we could, and frankly now should, expect to see in video games going forward, and I will never forget that. And even though we'll likely never see a sequel, the Mega Man Legends games, particularly 2, also stand out to me a lot. I remember really getting into the story during the game's big, plot twist after you get through the 4 major ruins in the game. Both the music and the battles that followed it were really something to remember. I really hope that that's not the last that we actually see of poor Mega Man Trigger trapped on the moon. Oh, and Resident Evil, of course. I'm pretty sure that seeing those dogs jump through the window in the original Resident Evil taught me to never go into any room in a game, let alone a horror game, without my guard up. Ever again. The downfall of Arthas in Warcraft 3 was also a big one for me, as I wasn't even a big fan of strategy games and still enjoyed the heck out of it at the time. It conveyed a lot of the elements that you see in a really, really great fantasy novel, but right in front of your eyes instead. This last one is a bit more recent, but the ending to Bioshock Infinite absolutely blew me away. As much as it pains me that we may never actually see another Bioshock game again, I admit this ending made it so that I'd never really be able to look at the series the same way again regardless. I'm sure there's more I could think of with enough time, but those are all the ones that immediately come to mind at least. What's been the most stressful / scariest moment for you in gaming? For me, it's the bridge in Crash Bandicoot. You know the one I'm talking about. Yes, I do know the one you're talking about. Before I realized you could just cheese your way through that stage by walking on the bridge ropes on the side, that absolutely broke me. I think I spent close to an hour just getting through it the first time. But to answer your question, there are a few particularly tense moments that stand out to me, and if you saw my Cuphead video with the final boss fight, you already know one of them. What I'm also thinking of right off the top of my head, though, is some of the dream sequences in the original Max Payne. For those who don't know, Max Payne has some sequences where Max goes into a recurring nightmare about the death of his family. It has some cool ideas, like the environment stretching out and making everything really warped looking. In fact, I thought that was pretty cool, actually. But it also has these platforming sections where you have to walk and jump across these thin little lines of blood to get to the next section. They're difficult platforms, but that's not what's so bad about it. If you fall, you hear one of the most horrifying sounds of screaming from both the baby and Max's wife. And if you fall again, you hear it again, and again! I eventually had to mute my TV until I figured the whole thing out. I couldn't stand it anymore. Still a great game, don't get me wrong, but oh, man. Other honorable mentions include Pokemon, with Abra running away if you fail to throw a Pokeball at it in time, or don't think of using an attack like Bind to stop it, which I did not when I was younger, and the freaking holes in E.T. for the Atari. The game would have been halfway decent if it wasn't such an exercise in escaping those dang holes. Alright, and that's going to do it for this first ever Q&A. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you have any questions for me to use in another future video, feel free to post them here below, and we'll talk some more. Until next time.